Hello, this is Tony Nicholls from Great Ideas, and in this video we're going to be looking at how to customize the rows that occur within the instance builder. So remember from previous videos that the dynamic page generation process is essentially rendering each page based on a set of standard components. So we have a header, navigation, and an instance builder. And if we look at that inside an actual page, we see that we have the header at the top here, the navigation along here. We have a command bar that occurs here as part of the instance builder, and what we're going to be focusing on in this video is the customization of this main section here. So we're going to be looking at how do we look at the tab strips and how do the tab strips then govern the display of the page that's being rendered within the instance builder. So the key components that we want to understand in this video are what's happening inside the tab bar component and how are we then moving into the rows and defining how a row looks. So let's start from the top of the hierarchy. We've got our instance builder. You can see our instance builder is referencing the tab bar. So here is the tab bar. It's everything from here down to the bottom of the page. A tab bar is essentially formatting a Telerik tab strip at the top of the page, and then within that tab it's rendering each of the rows that are visible to the user. And then the row definitions are very, very simple. By default, we're providing you what we describe as a generic row, and anything that's not a generic row is going to throw an undefined row format error. So how this renders out in the user experience is here we have an instance builder. We have a tab strip where this particular user is able to see the overview, data model, workflow, and so on tabs. Within this overview tab, we've got a row here that's basically outlining a few fields. We have another row, and another row. So this is actually what we're going to use as our test data. So what this test functionality, test rows concept is doing is it is allowing me to declare records that have a data model, and the data model consists of two rows. So here's row 1, here's row 2. All 6 of these fields are on tab 1. And what we've just done here is we've said that in row 1, we have 3 fields, a left, a right, and a center. And if we remember the generic tab, and if we remember the generic row layout, we see that each row essentially is going to be formatted by an HTML table that gives us a total of 7 fields across 3 sub-rows. So let's have a quick look at what that code looks like. So if I go to my row and open up my generic row, you can see I have an HTML table. That HTML table is essentially formatting a display that enables me to see a total of 7 fields. So here's my fields. Which row am I on? Which instance am I trying to render? And then the field name tells me how each field is actually being referred to by name within the form builder. So if we go and have a look at our data model again, you can see here that on tab 1 in row 1 in the center position, I'm looking for a field called C11. On tab 1 in row 1 in the left position, I'm going to look for a field called LL11. And in tab 1, row 1 in the right field position, I'm looking for R11. So if we go and actually have a look at a data value that's been defined using this page format, we can see we have the left field and the right field and another left field and another right field. And the question that we should be asking is, well, where did the center field go? Well, the answer to that question is very simple. In the generic row layout, there is no center field. So if I go back to my code here, there is no field name of center. I've got the left, right, left, and so on, but there's no center. So let's start to tweak the user experience to include a new type of row. So let's start by going over here and going back to our test rows and going back to our overview. Now we see here that we have no tabs defined. So by default, what happens in the form generator is if you have not defined a tab, it will create tab 1, give it the name of overview, and then within tab 1, it will generate 10 generic rows for form information and 10 additional rows for subform information located between rows 7 and 8 of the generic form information. So if I look at this and I go back over here to my AA record, you see I've got my default overview tab and I've got 2 rows that are currently being displayed that are using the generic format. So let's go back to our row table, and what we're going to do now is we're going to change it by adding a new tab definition. So here I'm going to change the name to test tab definition. Now if I save this and go back to my functionality, you'll see that I'm able to clear my application state. So this is essentially going to publish the change into this build. So if I go here and look at my test record now, you see that the name has changed from overview to test tab definition 1, but it's still trying to display the generic 10 rows. Okay, so now let's go in and actually try and tweak this display a little bit. So if I go back to my test rows and my tab definition, I can now override the default row definitions. So let's start by just saying that row number 1 will be a generic row. And then I'm going to declare a new row. I'm going to declare row 2 as being a left, center, right row. Okay, so I've now got a tab definition and I am overriding the default 10 generic rows. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back and apply this change. And now if I go to my test record, here we go. I've got my generic row format for row 1. But row 2 is now an undefined row format. It doesn't know what a left, center, right row is. So what I need to do now is I need to change my backend code to tell it what a left, center, right row looks like. So I already have some sample code that I prepared earlier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this code into my row definitions. So here you can see that the row formats are simply a great big case statement. So here's my generic case statement, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to introduce a new case option called left, center, right, and I've introduced some new classes in here that define my layout of this particular row, so I'm going to copy those in as well. Okay, so if I stop, save my changes and reload. So here I've navigated back to my test record and you can see I've got my row 1, which is still using the generic format. So it knows what a left is and it knows what a right is, but it doesn't have a center. And my new row 2 is displaying my center and right fields, but it doesn't know what a left field is. Okay, so if you remember my row definition over here, I've got a left and a center and a right, but I didn't put the left field in. So when I'm looking at this page here, I can see my left here, but there's no left here. I can see my center here, but there's no center here, and right is visible in both locations. So if I want to put my field that was in the left position, if I want to display this on my row 2, what I can do is I can change the field definition here. So instead of the field position being left, I could change that to left. And then if I apply these changes and go back here, you can see that my field is now visible in the left position. Okay, so the important thing to note is it's not the name of the field or the name of the X element that determines where it's being rendered or whether it's being rendered on a row. It's the field name that's being associated with the field. So the fact that we changed the field name from left to left is what's now making this field visible on this particular page. So what this capability enables you to do is it enables you to easily lay out a form if you're happy with no tabs, just the default 1 tab, 10 rows, you're good to go. You can add as many tabs as you want and you can determine the permissions of the tabs. Within each tab, by default, it will go for the 10 generic rows for the main form and the 10 generic rows for the subform, or it will give you the option to override those rows with a customized set of rows for each tab. And if you want to define your own tab formats, you essentially have to add a switch statement into here to say which field names do you want to use and how do you want to lay out those rows. And you have complete flexibility in deciding how you want to do that. So essentially, it's a very simple C# Blazor customization in the back end to declare a whole new row definition format. And it's a very simple application in the front end to enable you to change the way that tabs are defined to use as many of those different row definitions within a tab as you need.
To learn more about great ideas, products, and solutions, visit greatideas.com. That's great ideas with a Z.com. Thanks.